Fear that we experience in life is stress. So stress is simply the fear that we can't control everything. Friends, we need a re-education. We need to detox from this addictive cycle of fear that's become normal in our society. And the first step in this detox from fear is realizing that control is an illusion. You were never in control in the first place, as we saw in the video downstairs. So in tonight's gospel, Jesus invites his own disciples to set out in a boat. It's been a long day of ministry for Jesus, and so as they set across the sea, Jesus takes a well-deserved nap, right? The wind kicks up, his disciples panic, and all of a sudden the ancient fear response is triggered, that fight or flight response. And the disciples in an instant forget the truth that's at the center of the spiritual life, that God is with us in the boat. And Jesus, waking up, asks almost dumbfounded, "Why are you afraid? I'm here with you in the boat. Don't you forget that I told you that we would go across together?" He said, "Let us go across." He would never leave them alone. And he could just as easily say that to us tonight. When you got the news about the cancer, did you forget that we were going across together? That when your finances were in turmoil, did you forget that we were going across together? And when you feared that you were making the wrong decision in life, did you forget that we were going across together? Let us go across, Jesus tells us tonight. Let us go across. Don't you understand that there's no storm that can separate you from the presence of God? There is no life situation that can divide you from the one who loves you into existence and sustains you at every moment. There is no amount of stress. There is no amount of fear or economic struggle. There is no job loss. There is no worry that can capsize the very presence of our God. Let us go across, Jesus tells us tonight. For peace isn't attained by sailing in waters that are always calm. Peace is attained by knowing who is with you in the boat. For Jesus, peace was never about eliminating the storm, but peace is about knowing who's with you in the boat, even though the storm may rage. I think tonight, and I think throughout this weekend, there's a temptation to misread the words of Jesus, "Do not be afraid," which he preaches over and over in his ministry. Do not be afraid does not mean the elimination of fear. Jesus is not suggesting that to believe means to eradicate fear from our lives. For Jesus isn't promising us a life without fear, but he is showing us that it's possible to live a life without being imprisoned by that fear. Faith doesn't make us fearless, friends. Faith gives us the courage to face our fears fearlessly. Faith gives us the courage to face our fears fearlessly. One of the joys of being a father of young children is watching them at the beach. And last summer we went to the beach in Narragansett, Rhode Island, which has been a tradition of ours for many years. And there was a large hurricane over the coast of the Bahamas, which made the waves in Rhode Island breathtaking. They were 6 and 7 feet high, unlike I'd ever seen on the East Coast. And one of the great joys was watching my children as a wave 2 or 3 times their height crash upon the beach. They would run in terror and in delight at the same time, and watching this pattern over and over of running into the water ankle deep and then running back in fear. And someday when they're older, I'll teach them that they don't have to run away from large waves, that they can actually dive beneath the biggest waves rather peacefully, that all they have to do is slip underneath the chaos that's happening at the surface of the water. But to them, at age 3 and 5, this looks like suicide, right? Why would you ever run toward a wave that has the power to knock you over? Well, that's precisely what we're inviting you to do this weekend. To dive into the waves of your own fear. To slip beneath the surface. To dive deeply into your fears, knowing that our fears truly have no power over us. In a few moments, we'll invite you to come forward to one of the members of the retreat team who will be standing in front of the altar. And we'll ask you to receive a seashell, as Father David mentioned downstairs. And on that shell is written some form of fear. We invite you to use that shell and the word that's written on it to guide your reflections on fear this weekend. We can't learn about our fears by running away, like my children did on the beach. In fact, the invitation from Jesus tonight is to dive deeply into fear. And the shell becomes the perfect symbol for us because in medieval Europe, pilgrims who would set out on a sacred journey would actually wear seashells around their necks. The shell became a symbol of a sacred pilgrimage from fear to love. And so this weekend we embark upon that journey together, from fear to love. We dive deeply into our fear with the knowledge that we are not alone. And as you hold these shells in your hands tonight, remember that they too have lived beneath violent and stormy seas. These shells have survived from being totally crushed under the weight of the water and under the chaos of pounding surf. For in the end, friends, Jesus did not promise us lives without storms. Rather, he promised us that we would never be in the boat alone. And with his presence, we might learn to face our fears fearlessly.